Have you ever wondered if you're making progress in your grief? You know, those early days, those awful early days, and it feels like nothing will ever get better. What's the point? I remember what that was like. And you know, the other day I found a diary. I woke up every morning and wrote how I was feeling after my husband died. And as I read it, I realized the awful pain that I was in then. And compared to where I am now, it's night and day. But at the time, you don't think you're ever going to get out of it. You don't think it's ever going to change. And the reality is grief will always be with you. And that can be a really scary prospect, can't it? Because you think, oh God, am I going to feel like this forever for the rest of my life? And I would say, no, you're not. Your life will change around your grief. But there are a couple of things to consider. You know, my background is as a physical therapist, and we used to ask people to rate their pain when they came in. Because, you know, several weeks later, you might say, how are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I'm not better at all. No, I'm no better. And you would check, where did they rate their pain and had it come down and what was their function? And they could then see, oh, okay, yes, I have improved. You see, the trouble is when you're dealing with pain, whether that's grief or physical pain, every day, you don't really notice the improvements. And I think the other thing with grief, we tend to compare where we are now with the person we are before our loved one died. And that we can't do. We have to compare ourselves to the moment they died. That person in grief, what is the gain that we have? You know, I read a great book called The Gap and the Gain, and I can't remember who it's by, but it was really good. Rather than looking at the gap of where you are, you know, oh, but I used to be able to do all this. I used to be this. That is not who you are. That is the gap. Look at the gain. Look at where you've come from the very beginning of your grief. You know those moments when you could barely get out of bed, maybe you couldn't shower or get dressed? Maybe you're doing that now. That's progress. Maybe you wouldn't go shopping, but maybe now you can face getting out of the car and going to the grocery store and buying your stuff. You know, there are little things. It's these things. It's not, am I back to normal? Your normal is different and you're different. And I think you need to start looking at, well, what are the gains that I've had here? What have I now managed to do? Am I managing to talk about my loved one now without bursting into tears? Am I able to smile and laugh without feeling guilty? Am I able to drive past a certain place without it activating some sort of feeling in me of loss and absence? It's these things, and as the grief softens, as you come a little bit more towards peace, that you can notice that there are changes. Don't have this ideal person, this you that you were before. That you is different now. And so I would say, if you want to look at your progress in grief, look at where you were right at the beginning of your grief journey. Look at the struggles you had then and look at what you're doing now. And they may be so little. I'm going to share something my husband used to say, by the thickness of a sheet of paper. He was a jazz pianist, and one day I said, when will I ever be able to play jazz? I can already play the piano. And he said, well, you'll improve by the thickness of a sheet of paper. And I thought, God, that's not very much, is it? And it isn't very much. It's tiny, but you know, if you have enough sheets of paper, you get a chapter, and you have enough chapters, you get a book. So think of your improvements by the thickness of a sheet of paper. They're small compared to the beginning of your grief journey to where you are now, and you'll see you have made progress. I promise you.